Hey, it's you, man, from KC95 here. Good evening and welcome to Toasted Tavern. Your host, Scott Tobin, and the man called Wags are ready to bring you the night in sports. So pull up a stool, grab a drink, and let's get toasted.
Oh boy, does it feel good to hear that man's voice and then to look and see this man's face as well. Yes, the Toasted Tavern is back in business after a bit of a hiatus. We are back to talk sports. It's Michael Wagenknecht alongside Scott Tobin. And Scott, it's been a long time. We've had some ups and downs over the last year or so, but we are back and we are ready to go with lots of good sports talk.
Yeah, back from the dead, man. You can't keep a good show down, and it's good to see you there, Mitch. How you doing?
Not too bad. I gotta love the fact that we don't even remember each other's names. No, we've had some stuff going on, health wise and personally, and all that kind of stuff. And it definitely put this on the back shelf for a little while. But throughout all of it, we were continuing to talk, continuing to share sports stories, and keep on being a part of the sports landscape in the St. Louis area. And now with things kind of settling down with new jobs and things of that nature, we're able to get back and do what we love, what we want to do, which is talk about the St. Louis sports scene, really the Midwestern sports scene, because it seems, again, to always be overlooked outside of those East and West Coast biases. And we've got a lot of great stuff happening in the Midwest, and it's got to be talked about, right?
We do. It needs to be talked about. It needs to be screamed from the mountaintops, and we're back to do it. So let's jump right into it, man, and start talking some sports because it's been way too long.
That it has, and what a great way to start things off. It's the eve of opening day in St. Louis. Yes, the season started last week, but opening day is huge in St. Louis. It should be a state holiday. You should have the day off. Everybody should be able to go downtown and celebrate. But it is the eve of the opening day at Busch Stadium. Nothing like the pageantry of that. And you being an employee with the Cardinals, getting a chance to experience that in multiple different ways is got to be incredible. Walk us through kind of what you've experienced on opening day and really what we can expect starting tomorrow.
Man, if you haven't experienced opening day, first of all, everybody needs to do it at least once because nobody does opening day like the Cardinals in the city of St. Louis. I mean, it's amazing. Pep rallies and ball games at 3:15 tomorrow. Pep rallies start at 10 o'clock in the morning. There'll be 10 or 15,000 people downtown at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, starting to have pep rallies and at Keener Plaza and at Ballpark Village and all over downtown. You'll see Cardinal fans and Cardinal red everywhere. Radio stations, TV stations will all be broadcasting from downtown. Fred Bird will be out making his way early tomorrow morning all over the place. Some of the Cardinals upper management will be around meeting people, and it'll just be a party from early tomorrow morning until, the gates open at noon. People will start rolling in. The festivities begin at 1:30. So as a Cardinal employee, I encourage everybody to be in the ballpark and in your seats at 1:30 so you can start to enjoy those pregame festivities because there is a lot planned for you like there is every year, and you don't want to miss the Clydesdales and the parade of cars and the red jackets and all the fun stuff. And I mean, it's not just a ball game, man. It's just a party and an event, and it's a celebration of not just this season, but the 120 years of Cardinal baseball that we've all gotten to enjoy, in the 11 World Series and all those memories that, that make people tear up when they see those videos and hear those sounds. And that's what it's all about, man. It's about families, fathers and grandfathers bringing little kids down to the ballpark, and moms and daughters, families embracing Cardinal baseball, and another family, another generation being ingratiated into Cardinal Nation and really starting to understand what Cardinal Nation and Cardinal baseball is all about. And it's just a really great thing to see, and it'll be a fun day. And like I said, there'll be 45,000 people inside the stadium and another 10 or 15,000 people just mulling around outside at Ballpark Village. It's going to be a fun day. Unfortunately, as great as it's going to be, we all thought when we saw the schedule, we thought, oh, cool. The Cardinals start on the road in LA at the end of March, first part of April. It'll be warm there. And then when they come home in April, it'll be really nice. Well, what happened? Cardinals went to LA last week, and it was 80 degrees in St. Louis and 50 in LA. And then they come home from LA, and it's going to be, it was 80 in San Diego today. It'll be 40 and maybe snow flurries tomorrow morning. So, yeah, it didn't exactly work out weather-wise the way we wanted it to, but it's April in St. Louis, so it'll probably snow in the morning and then be, by Saturday or Sunday, we'll be back in the 70s and 80s. And it'll be warm in the ballpark, though, because it's Cardinal baseball, and everybody will be happy to hear that ball hit the mitt and play ball get screened for the first time. So it's going to be a fun day.
Yeah, and you get to hear John Hewlett's voice announcing each player as they come out as well. So it's a return to normalcy in a sense when it comes to the opening day for the Cardinals here at home. And again, with the weird way the schedule works out too, the Cardinals will play tomorrow and then they're off Friday and then we'll play Saturday and Sunday. And looking at the weather forecast, Saturday and Sunday should actually be really nice days temperature wise. There is a chance for some rain on those days, so that may hinder some of the length of play. And you may have a couple rain delays here and there, but the temperatures on Saturday and Sunday should be really, really nice. And the fact that the opponent that's coming in is not started off so hot is also another good indicator for the Cardinals that they may actually have the ability to have a good start to their home slate. We'll talk in just a bit about the first week and the week that was, the impressions that we got, the games that we saw, and things of that nature. But we'll continue to talk a little bit about what we're going to see starting tomorrow. Lance Lynn is going to get the start. He's already got one under his belt this year. Only went 4 against the Dodgers, but only gave up 4 hits and struck out 5. So it wasn't a bad outing for him, really trying to get him back into his workhorse mentality and extend him out a little bit. So I'm interested to see how he fares in the game tomorrow. So you got him, you got Matz, and you got Gibson going. And honestly, this past week, those 3 weren't that bad. It gave some hope to this pitching staff that we actually might be somewhat okay. We don't have Sonny Gray right now. He's coming back from the hamstring injury, although he had a simulated game today, said everything seemed to go well, seemed fine. He might be back with us very, very soon, as well as a couple of other injured players that the Cardinals are missing. And, they need to start off on a good foot when it comes to the home slate. They have to come out and win a couple of games, really get the fans excited and behind them early on, because there was a lot of negativity in the offseason. And if they come out and lay an egg on opening day, that's not going to quell anybody's fears.
Yeah, it's going to be big to come out and have a good game. Like you said, Lance Lynn pitched pretty well in that first game against LA. He only went 4 innings because of the rain delay and everything. But, he got himself in trouble a couple of times. That first inning that he pitched against the Dodgers on Saturday night, had the bases loaded, nobody out, and then struck 3 guys out in a row to get out of it.
Well, we may have lost Scott here for a second. We'll see if he's able to get back on. But looking at, the week that was for the Cardinals, it wasn't all that great to start. You had the 7-1 loss to LA on opening day. Only 3 hits for the Cardinals, all of them by Paul Goldschmidt. Miles Michaelis only went 4 1/3, gave up 5 earned runs, with 7 hits, 2 walks, 5 strikeouts. Did give up the 2 home runs as well. But after that, they seemed to kind of get things going a little bit. Yes, they ended up losing the next day 6-3 to the Dodgers, but Thompson pitched decently well. He did give up 5 earned runs, 3 of them via the home run, but he struck out 4, ended up going 5 1/3. The Cardinals got 6 hits, 1 by Gorman, 2 each from Gorman and Wynn. So the young kids were starting to get going a little bit as well. So you have that. And then you move into the Saturday game, where the Cardinals ended up winning that game, although they kind of had to hold on in a sense. There was a 6-5 victory there, 7 hits, 5 runs in the 7th inning via sac fly, single balk, and a ground rule double. Helsley blew a save, but did keep the game tied and allowed the Cardinals to get that win in the 10th inning. And then that 5-4 loss on Sunday with another blown lead by the Cardinals in the 8th inning. You talked a little bit about the fact that they struggled a little bit. John King gives up the save, blowing it in the 8th after giving up. Him and Palante gave up home runs to Teoscar Hernandez and Max Muncy, which eventually led to the Dodgers winning that one. So that first series, yeah, they went 1-3, but after game 1, wasn't that bad of a series despite the loss, except for the back end of the bullpen kind of blowing up.
Yeah, you ran into trouble on Sunday because you had to go so deep into your bullpen on Saturday because of the rain delay, and then Zach Thompson only going 4 2/3 in that first game. So, you were a little short on your bullpen, and, you decided to go with John King and have him make his season debut in a big spot. It came back to bite you. But like you said, they played pretty decent those last 3 games of that series. And then, you go into San Diego and you got exactly what you wanted. I mean, Kyle Gibson came out. A lot of people have talked about, Lynn and Gibson and been not excited about the fact that the Cardinals brought those guys in, because of their age, because of different things. And people were kind of underwhelmed with those two signings. Kyle Gibson was really good last year in Baltimore. He had 16 wins. His ERA was 4.4, but, he was pitching in Baltimore, which is a hitter's ballpark. So you bring him back to St. Louis, back to a pitcher's ballpark, back home. His family lives just right outside of St. Louis. And this is where he wanted to be. And he came in and, he's got big connections to the city and already had connections with the team, being really involved with Waino and big league impact. And so he was excited to go out there, and he did exactly what you wanted him to do. He goes out and he gives you 7 innings and only gives up 4 hits and really set the tone for that series with the way he pitched. And Wilson Contreras comes through in that first game, hits a big 2-run homer. Brendan Donovan hits a solo home run and kind of gets things going, and you win that one. And then, it carries over into game 2. You come out and you get a good pitching performance from Miles Michaelis, who struggled against the Dodgers. He bounces back. He gives you 6 solid innings, only gives up 2 runs, and same kind of thing. The Cardinals show that they can score different ways. You get your first run, Victor Scott turns a single into right field into a double. And, the fact that he took that shot as a double in any situation is crazy, but the fact that he ran on Fernando Tatis, who's got an absolute cannon, and beat that out was just amazing. And then, Michael Ciani bunts him over to third, and Mason Wynn hits the sacrifice fly and manufacture a run. And then, Wilson Contreras comes through again, hits a 2-run homer in the 6th inning last night, just like he did in game 1, almost in the exact spot, right over the 396 marker in right center field, and gives you the lead. And then you're able to add on, and your bullpen was really good in those first 2 games. Ryan Helsley came in both games, held the lead, the 4-run lead in the first one, and then got the save in the second game, and only threw 13 pitches in the 2 appearances. You got a good appearance from Andrew Kittredge, and, the bullpen really settled in, and you're starting to see signs of them coming together. And then today's game was just a tough one. Zach Thompson just did not have it today. I mean, he gutted through 5 innings, but his velocity has been way down. His fastball is only at like 90, 91 miles an hour, which makes you kind of concerned that there might be some kind of an issue there. And then, I didn't get to watch the first part of the game, but I was listening and listening to Ricky Horton and John Rooney on the radio. It didn't sound like he had much on anything. His curveball wasn't really working. His changeup was just kind of rolling, and he was gutting his way through it. And, only gave up 3 runs in those 5 innings and kept the team in the game. And they battled. They had a bunch of opportunities today. Unfortunately, you hit into 4 double plays. You have 2 runners thrown out trying to steal. But you were still in it. You had the tying run. You had the winning runs on base in the 9th inning. And unfortunately, Victor Scott struck out after a battle. He fouled off about 7 pitches before he struck out. But they put up quite a fight, and you come home 3-4, and you have to feel pretty good about this team, man. I think they showed you that they can battle and they can play with both of those 2 teams. And, a lot of people going into that 7-game road trip, a lot of the unhappy Cardinal fans that were like, oh, they didn't do anything. They're not any good. They can't do anything. They're going to finish in last place. I saw a lot of people predicting they were going to win 1 game on this road trip, or they might not win a game at all. And they very easily could have been 5-2. You come home 3-4, and you go take your shot against a Marlins team that, like we said earlier, has not gotten off to the best start so far.
And when you look at what the Cardinals have done, and they've done this, coming back 3-4 with not having a good offensive week. I mean, coming into today's game, they were hitting .217 as a team. They had 63 combined strikeouts in those first 6 games, not including today. I think they had 11 today, so that's upwards now over 70 strikeouts combined, with only 15 walks combined coming into today's game as well. I think they had 4 in this one, so up to 19, which both of those rank in the bottom 10. I know it's early. I know it's only 7 games in, but the fact that you're already bottom 10 in strikeouts combined and drawing walks is not a great sign early on. And a lot of that is due to the fact that you have some young guys in the lineup that aren't used to seeing major league pitching and maybe expanding their zone a little bit. I mean, Victor Scott's striking out a whole lot, but when he gets on base, he's definitely a threat. You're going to have a Mason Wynn, even a Jordan Walker and a Nolan Gorman, who saw experience last year, still finding out what it takes to be a hitter at the major league level. So I feel like those strikeouts will start to regress to the mean and come back a little bit. But right now it's an early concern, and going up against a Miami team that has a couple of guys that can blow the ball past you. It's a little concerning going into this series that, they're 0-7 coming into this, but if they get a good pitching performance or two from one of their starters, they could turn things around very, very quickly. So the Cardinals are going to need to come out and they're going to need to hit, and they're going to need to get guys like Goldschmidt and Arenado going. Now, Wilson Contreras, had a couple home runs in that San Diego series, only batting 167, but listening to BK and Ferrario this afternoon, they made a really, really good point that those 2 home runs were essentially to right center field. So when a batter is on, that's usually what they're doing, is hitting it the opposite direction in that right center field area. So just because his batting average isn't there, it's been impressive what Wilson Contreras has done early on in the season, and he's handling the pitching staff as well. So that's a bright spot for the Cardinals early on in the season. And if you can continue to have him do that, add in a hot Arenado and a Goldschmidt and get some of these young kids going, this could be a surprisingly dangerous offensive team.
They really could. And, like you said, they didn't have a good offensive series, but this team is different than the Cardinals teams of the last couple of years. The last few years, the Cardinals have been a station to station. If we don't hit a 3-run homer, we're not going to score any runs kind of a team. And we've already seen this year, this team can score in multiple ways. We're seeing them play some small ball. We're seeing them run. We're seeing them hit and run. We've seen them bunt. I think we've had more sacrifice flies already this year than I remember all year last year. I mean, they're moving runners over. They're giving themselves up. They're hitting the ball to the right side to advance runners. They're doing little things and manufacturing runs, something that the Cardinals have not been good at the last couple of years. And, so that's a huge thing. And I think the thing you got to be most excited about is the defense.
Yeah.
You're 7 games into the season now. You're one of 3 teams that hasn't made an error yet.
Wait. Now, great. Good job. Way to go. Tomorrow, 4 errors.
Broadcaster jinx. I know. But, it's not only that they're not making errors. They're making the fantastic plays. And the defense has been on point, and they've shown off. I mean, Jordan Walker made a Superman catch the other night where he just literally laid out and flew through the air. We've seen Michael Ciani make a couple of diving catches when he's been in there defensively. We've seen Brendan Donovan do it. Mason Wynn has showed off that gun of an arm he has. And I don't care if he hits or not, and his batting average isn't good so far, but Victor Scott, I don't care if he hits 0, man. Watching him play center field, I mean, he just settles that whole defense down outfield-wise because he can get to anything, and he just glides. I mean, he just looks like a natural pro superstar Gold Glove caliber center fielder already out there, which the Cardinals really haven't had since, let's be honest, they really haven't had it since Jimmy. I mean, Harrison Bader for a couple of years, and he did win a Gold Glove, but I mean, consistently you haven't had that since Jimmy Edmonds, and that's what that Victor Scott can provide because of his speed, because of his ability. He makes it possible for Jordan Walker to lay out on a ball like he did the other day, or Ciani, because you have that speed in center field that is going to be right there to back you up if that ball gets behind you. And at the plate, like I said, he's only hitting 120, and he's struck out 9 times, but he's also really hit some balls hard and gotten some bad luck, man. He's crushed some balls right at people, and the hits he's had have been line drives. I mean, it's not like the couple of hits he has had have been infield singles. He's smoked some balls all over the field. And so I've been really impressed with him. He's shown pretty good plate discipline. I mean, we got to remember that he's played 60 games in the minor leagues above A ball. So, he's going to take his lumps, but I really think the kid's shown enough that even when Lars Nootbaar comes back, I don't send him down. I think you send Michael Ciani down. I mean, he's done a nice job defensively, but he's not going to give you anything offensively, really. I mean, I think they said the other night that his last big league hit was in 2019. So, I mean, he's a defensive first guy that you can send down to Memphis and bring him back up when you need him to fill in defensively. And I think you just put Victor Scott in center field, you let him hit 9th, and you just go with it, man, because even though he's not hitting, he's still in 7 games, he scored 6 runs. He is scoring runs, he's making things happen. And like I said, his defense has just settled things down in the outfield, and I wouldn't mess with it because, if you take that speed and that what he brings at the bottom of that lineup out, then you go back to, okay, now we're back to, we don't have that aspect of our offense. And so if we're not slugging, how do we get those runs again? Because you don't have that speed. I mean, you've still got Mason Wynn down there, but it won't be the same as having the 2 guys that really can create something without a whole lot of contact necessarily.
Well, and it also brings up the question of, Lars Nootbaar is going to be with the team tomorrow. He may not get into the game anytime soon. He may be this weekend. because he's eligible to come off the IL, I believe, tomorrow. So they're not going to have him in the lineup, but maybe on Saturday or Sunday you see him get in there. But the other question becomes now when Dylan Carlson and when Tommy Edman come back, what's the situation there? Because obviously Carlson had a great spring. He was in line to start in center field. That's why Victor Scott wasn't even a part of the Major League roster until Carlson was injured. When Carlson comes back, what does that do? Do you have to send Scott down at that point and let him develop a little bit more at the AAA level? Or are you going to say, hey, Carlson, it's going to be a platoon system? There's a lot of questions that are going to be revolving around what to do with these guys if a guy like Victor Scott continues to showcase what he can do for this team. And it's the speed aspect that this team has been lacking in a sense for the last couple of years that he brings to this team, that if you send him down, yes, you've got a Mason win, but it's not as game-changing of a speed as what Victor Scott brings to the Cardinals. So that's a question that they're going to have to answer in the near future as well. Does that allow you to maybe bring Tommy Edman and Dylan Carlson along a little bit slower? Don't rush their recovery. Don't rush them back into the lineup. That's another thing is, are you going to do that? So there's a lot of question marks still early on in the season for this Cardinals team. And it's good that you have the ability to ask these questions. You could come out of this 7-game stretch and be like the Marlins where you're 0-7 and you go, okay, well, you know what? We've been missing 3 guys due to injury, 4 guys really, if you count Sonny Gray, 4 guys due to injury. And, when they come back, we'll send the guys down that were up here that really probably shouldn't be up here, get these guys back in the lineup and see what we have. But now you've got the question of, okay, hey, we came in, we're 3-4 on that road trip against a World Series contender and a team that thinks they're a World Series contender in San Diego, although I question if they even have that ability this year. But you came away 3-4 with not a great offensive explosion in that moment. So now you have a bunch of questions as far as what do you do when these guys get healthy? You're going to have to see how these younger players do in the next week or so, see if these numbers on as far as average and stuff start to creep up a little bit, or they don't, and then it makes your decision a whole lot easier. So lots of things that the Cardinals are going to have to look at over the next week or so when you're getting Nootbaar back. Carlson's still developing in his rehab, and same thing with Tommy Edman. So that's going to be the big question marks that the Cardinals are going to have. And you know what? It's okay because they're going to get in and they are going to, go into opening day, do what they normally do, the pageantry, the excitement that comes around with it. And then after Thursday, then it's right back down to business. And then you start answering the questions on if you send Scott down when Carlson and Edman come back, or you do something different.
Yeah, I'll answer that question real quick. Apparently, we've been gone so long, StreamYard doesn't know how to leave me on the show either. They keep kicking me out for some reason. They're like, hey, this guy isn't supposed to be on here. Kick him out. So sorry about that. But anyway, yeah, what you do with Scott is an interesting question. And I think the bigger question at this point is, when do we see Tommy Edman? Because apparently he's having an MRI again, either today or tomorrow, to see where that hand is and see if everything is still okay. And if he can finally be cleared to actually start doing some baseball activities, because he still hasn't picked up a bat since October. And from the reports I heard today, it sounds like Dylan Carlson his return might be a little slower than the Cardinals originally thought. He's a little sore, having a little more issue than they anticipated. So, those two things might give Victor Scott even more of a runway than we had thought. And, hopefully, like I said, I've been impressed with the kid. I think you have too. And I hope he can really take advantage of it and settle down, because from what I've seen after a week, I don't think he's really that overwhelmed by Major League Baseball. I think he's able to slow down, and I think the more at-bats he gets, I think he's just going to improve offensively.
And I was one of those that was highly disappointed when he didn't make the opening day roster before the Carlson injury. I thought he more than deserved an opportunity on this team. I think he brings game-changing speed. I mean, it is a whitey ball kind of mentality with him. And he even mentioned it. And the fact that you got a kid like that mentioning whitey ball by name shows you that the St. Louis Cardinals legacy is still ingrained in the minor league system. And that's something I wanted to bring up earlier, is the fact that, you talk about families coming to games. The Cardinal way is still present generation after generation, and it is still sticking with the Cardinals organization as well. And it helps that you've got a guy like Ozzie back with the organization. You got a Daniel Descalso as your bench coach, guys that really emulate that Cardinal way. And I was really surprised, and I wouldn't say fully against, but when they re-signed Matt Carpenter, I was kind of like, really? He's going to be middle of the lineup for some reason. He's going to get a bunch of playing time and not do anything. But I also understand the aspect of the fact that he is a guy that was going out there and doing the work, putting the work in to be a Cardinal in a sense. And it's a great locker room presence to have. Now, again, if he gets in there and he's starting to hit 6 most of this year and it's not doing much and he's still hitting around 200, then it's like, dude, really, what are you doing? But if he and a Brandon Crawford are in that, dugout, and they're really just offering that sage advice, building up these young stars that are in the making, I'm okay with that because they played the game the right way. And now they're emulating that to these young players. And now the young players are taking it. They're listening. And that's the big thing. These young players are listening. You got a lot of young stars out there that are like, I'm playing the game. I don't care what you guys say. This is how I'm doing it. These young guys are playing the game the right way because they were taught from the beginning how to play it the right way, and they're continuing to do that because they see that it works.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And first of all, we've got to have to comment on what great kids these guys are. I've gotten a chance the last couple of off seasons, not to spend a ton of time with them, but I've had a chance to talk to all 3 of those guys, Jordan Walker, Mason Wynn, and Victor Scott, and they could not be better kids, nicer kids, more humble kids, have better families, just great young people who want to learn and want to be part of the Cardinal organization. So you got to give them credit for that part of it, for just coming in and absorbing everything and wanting to learn and wanting to pick up from guys. Mason Wynn spent as much time with Ozzie as he could. You talked about it. Victor Scott has spent tons of time with Vince and Willie and Ozzie, really trying to soak in as much of the Whitey Ball experience as he can. And then, you talked about the 2 guys that they brought in to really kind of be those mentors in the locker room this year, and Carpenter and Brandon Crawford. And you can bring in veterans and, young kids might go, oh, who are these guys? They've been around forever, whatever. But these guys not only have been around, but they're accomplished. They're all-stars. They're World Series champions. I mean, Brandon Crawford can pull out those 3 World Series rings. Matt Carpenter can pull out a World Series ring and a National League championship ring and say, look what we've accomplished. Look what we've done. Here's how you do things. And that's good. And not just for the kids, that's good for the other veterans on the team to have those guys that have experienced, that have won and can share those experiences and really help even guys like Goldie and Arenado that still, unfortunately, have never gotten to the point where they've won yet. That just is another voice even for those guys at this point in their careers.
Yeah, it certainly is. And, the fact that you can even add, Yachty in there when he does pop in every so often. I know Albert's kind of off doing his own thing, but eventually he's going to come back into the fold and you're going to have another great mind for this Cardinals organization to kind of pick through. And maybe one of them is the next manager at some point. Who knows? We're not gonna poo-poo on Ali this early in the season. It's only 7 games in, but it is definitely something to bear watching. Yes, he got the extension in the offseason. It essentially makes him a non-lame duck coach. Right. He could still be let go at the end of the season if the Cardinals really wanted to, but it does give him some security and allows him to kind of manage the way he wants to manage. And I'll be interested to see how he evolves this year as well. We kind of saw the same thing with Mike Matheny, a guy with very, very little to none managerial experience. And yes, it wasn't all that great, but having to learn on the job at the major league level is a difficult thing to do. So it's going to be interesting to see how he evolves, if he evolves this year, and if the Cardinals got the guy that they want to continue on for the next couple of years, or if they're really just using him as a stopgap to one of these future Hall of Famers.
Yeah, and we all, Cardinal Nation loves, the Hall of Famers, and we all want to see Yachty manage or Albert manage, but they come in, it's going to be the same thing. It's going to be the same thing that Matheny did. It's going to be the same thing that Ollie's did. You can say, oh, Yachty's managed in the Caribbean League and he's managed in Puerto Rico, but that's not the same thing as managing in the major leagues. And Albert's never coached in Major League Baseball. So, you don't really want to rush those guys into that either. So let's just give Ollie the chance to see what he does. And it seems like he's already kind of changing things up just by the way he's playing. The aggressiveness that they've shown on the bases, the willingness to bunt, to move guys over, it kind of reminds me of a couple of years ago when Mike Schilt took over, honestly, man. It kind of has that feel again where they were running, and they were bunting, and they were doing the little things, and they were playing defense. And it just seems like there's a lot more attention to detail again this year, which we definitely did not see last year, and we saw the defensive lapses. a lot of that came from, last year was, and I think we have to take into account last year was just a weird year with the World Baseball Classic and Goldie and Arenado being gone all during the whole spring training and the pitching staff being gone most of the spring training. And I think it was just a weird year. I think it caused problems with the defense. I think it caused guys to wear down. I think it caused a lot of issues in a lot of different places. They didn't have that team chemistry in the spring because nobody was here. So I think you've kind of got a fresh start this year. And I think from everything we've heard, things in the clubhouse are good. The camaraderie is good. The field vibe is good. They feel like they've got something to prove. They busted out the Mizzou model for football season this year, something to prove. And they do. And I think they believe that. And I'm excited. I've been really enjoyed watching them this first week.
Well, Wilson Contreras kind of has something to prove this year as well. I don't know if it's to himself or to the team or anything like that, but after the year he kind of went through last year, kind of getting thrown under the bus and all that kind of stuff, it seems like all of that has been mended as well. So that's something to watch for. Ollie is kind of a disciple of a Schilt. Yes, he may not be, he's the guy who took over for him, but he was kind of in that same mindset. So it's understandable that you're going to see the same kind of style of play going forward from Ollie, because that's what he knew. That's what he grew up coaching wise seeing. And, we talk about, great players not being great coaches. We've seen it. Wayne Gretzky was an NHL coach for a while. He won games, yes, but it's different. And a lot of these great players, some of this stuff is just so natural that it's hard to teach. Now, we did see Mark McGuire as the hitting coach here in St. Louis and in LA do a really nice job with hitters. And you can throw the steroid stuff out the window because he was a good hitter as well, and not just the steroid thing, but he was able to convey that to the team. Albert probably could do that. I don't know if I could ever see Albert as a full-on manager. I think maybe as a hitting coach, he would probably do very, very well. And yes, Yadi's experience at the managerial level is in a different league and a different mindset. But if you look at the Dominican leagues, the Caribbean leagues, so many of those players are now in Major League Baseball that it's not as big of a step as I think we think it is to go from that to an MLB manager. Yes, he's still going to have to learn on the job, but he was also a catcher. And catchers are field managers anyway. So I would think he would actually have a little bit of an easier time making that transition. But you're right, though. One thing goes wrong, the entire fan base is going to come down on him, regardless of if he's got a Hall of Fame ring or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you. I think Yadi could be a good manager. The thing that I think Yadi's going to have the biggest problem with when he becomes the manager is the day-to-day grind, the dealing with the media. I think he's going to do a good job as a manager, do a good job with the team, but I think it's going to be those kinds of things that Yadi is not going to like, because Yadi didn't like dealing with the media. And to be totally honest, Yadi didn't love having to deal with the fans. Not that he doesn't like the fans, not that he doesn't appreciate the fans, not that he doesn't love the fans, but the one-on-one interaction, just because of the fact that his English isn't great, he didn't enjoy that. That was tough for him. He tried to avoid it as much as he could. And, when you have to do that every single day, I'm just not sure that that's something that Yadi is going to excel at. And if you're not able to do that, and if you're not able to relate and talk to the media, and you get standoffish with the fans, at some point the fans may turn on and I don't want to see that happen. So I think Yadi just needs to take some time and figure out if that's exactly what he wants to do. And I think that's kind of what's going on right now, is that I'm not sure that Yadi is at the point where he's really 100% sure that he wants to invest all the time that it's going to take to be a coach or a manager year round, dealing with all those little things.
And that's totally understandable. And if he never manages in Major League Baseball ever, I'm perfectly fine with that, because he had a Hall of Fame career here. He was great for the Cardinals. He brought in World Series championships. He did a lot for this city and for this team. So, if this is it for him, and he's just a special advisor, he's a spring training coach like Ozzy does, a special advisor comes down, that's perfectly fine with me, because I would rather have that mind going towards something that he is really dedicated to than having him sit on in a dugout going, do I really, really want to be here? So I think that's something, definitely a question for another day, and we'll see how it all plays out. But it's really important how this season goes for the Cardinals to see if that question just kind of gets pushed back further and further and further. Before we switch over from baseball, there is one other thing we got to talk about locally here that has to do with baseball and football. Yesterday was election day. Kansas City had a measure on the ballot about extending the sales tax for stadium renovations, construction, etc. for the Royals and for the Chiefs. Voters did not pass it. They said resounding no. And it wasn't so much that they were against continuing to pay this tax. It was more so the fact that the stadium design and location from the Royals, none of it was ever transparent. And it went through a couple of different iterations before kind of getting a half-assed version of it before the voting occurred. The Chiefs, on the other hand, that's something completely different, I think, but still was tied to it. And I kind of wanted to get your thoughts because we've been to Kauffman Stadium. We've gotten a chance to tour the facility, the Hall of Fame. We've gotten a chance to experience Kansas City as a whole and very much enjoy the setup that they have down there, understanding that a downtown stadium would be effective in a sense, especially where they were thinking of putting it, but it also runs into some snafus as far as traffic and demolishing buildings and kicking out established businesses and things of that nature. And then also giving the Chiefs the ability to kind of spread out a little bit more and upgrade the experience for fans there. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on what happened there and where you actually see it going. Are we on the verge of seeing one of those Kansas City teams jump across state borders?
I think it's possible. I think you're totally right with the Royals thing. It wasn't real transparent. They changed their mind about where they were going to build a stadium a couple of different times. They changed things, right up almost up until the vote. It wasn't exactly sure exactly what people were voting for or where it was going to be or what was going to happen. And then with the Chiefs, to basically break it down, they were asking people to pay a tax so that they could build more suites and more luxury boxes and charge people more money to get into for more expensive things in Arrowhead for people to spend more money on, which people said, no, you're billionaires. Why are we going to pay for that? Which, depending on where you come from, I can understand that. I think eventually, I was listening to BK, who is is tied into KC. He's a KC guy and still has a lot of connections out there. And he said, he thought that it would probably go back out onto the ballot in 6 months and, it would get voted on again. His final thoughts, and again, I haven't studied enough on all of this to really know exactly what could happen, but he kind of thought that eventually the Royals would get their downtown stadium and the Chiefs may end up jumping to Kansas, which you would hate to see that happen. You really, really would, because they're, the only team we have in Missouri. We don't want them going to Kansas. We want them to stay there. And, like you said, we both love that sports complex. I can understand both of them wanting to do nice things, but Arrowhead and Kauffman, where they're at, it's a beautiful area, and it's so cool that they're right next to each other, and they're both really pretty nice and well-maintained structures. I know they've both up there in age now, but they've both been maintained and renovated and look really nice. So there's a lot of people in Kansas City that don't think it's necessary for either one of them to move, but I think at some point, they probably will. I think the Royals will probably move downtown, and hopefully the Chiefs, they could come to some kind of an agreement, or, the Hunts, who have a lot of money. I think they're the 4th or 5th richest franchise ownership group in the NFL, will decide that they can front that money to do whatever they want to do to Arrowhead. They sold naming rights 2 years ago so that they could do some upgrades. So, they can find ways to bring that money in and keep the Chiefs where they are. And, if the Royals move eventually, then, you can tear down Kauffman and they can do even more renovations and build a little ballpark village type thing, which apparently they would like to, on that parking lot area, and do whatever they do. So hopefully they can come to some kind of terms and make that work where both teams stay and are in Kansas City where they belong, in Kansas City, Missouri, where they belong.
Well, and if Chiefs fans don't want the Chiefs to move from Kansas City, all you need to do is just get on social media, hit up Travis Kelce, and be like, yo, your girlfriend got plenty of money. Let's find a way to make this happen. It's right there. She sold it out a couple of different times. She was in there for that run. Taylor, you can help keep the Chiefs in Missouri. Keep them here by just donating a little bit of your funds to upgrade the suites. You were in the suites. You know exactly what you experienced. If you want it better, all you got to do is slide a couple $100 million across the table and you're all good to go.
See, all right, you just gave me the idea. Swifty Field at Arrowhead.
There you go. The DeAndre
it
Swift,
just writes itself, doesn't it?
It does. Although, let's see. How would Travis Kelce feel about playing on a field that was named after his girlfriend? I mean, I don't know. I don't know what kind of masculinity complex he has. It seems like he's changed a little bit. It seems like he's really kind of matured a little bit. But who knows? Who knows? I don't know. Jason Kelsey can help talk him down from the ledge, I'm sure. But it's a very interesting situation because at some point, yeah, you do have to upgrade facilities, especially ones that have been around for as long as those two have. But I just go back to that World Series for Kansas City when they were in town and the Chiefs had a home game as well. And that parking lot was packed with red and blue, and fans were just there having a good time, enjoying sports at the level that it should be enjoyed at. And yes, getting out of there sometimes, absolute nightmare. But the experiences that you have leading up to that make it all worthwhile. And, if the Chiefs are able to upgrade the tailgating experience, which is one of the things that they want to do, that's great because we know Kansas City, one of the best places for a tailgate for football or baseball. It makes perfect sense. It's got to happen. And yes, I think the Royals will eventually move downtown. I think it's almost a non-question as to if it's going to happen. It's more a matter of when, but they got to make it right. And the fans have to be a part of that as well. And I think after everything that's kind of gone down here in St. Louis with NFL teams, the Rams being pulled out of here, I know that there are some St. Louis fans that wouldn't be too upset if the Chiefs ended up moving to Kansas.
That's true. And talking about the Royals really quickly, and the history of the Royals and Royals Hall of Fame and our friend Kurt and all the nice people in Kansas City, we may need to make a trip to Kansas City in July for the Royals Hall of Fame induction as Mr. Bo Jackson is going into the Royals Hall of Fame this year. So we may have to make a trip out to Kansas City and see Kurt and see if we can get in on some of those festivities.
I'm 100% down for that because Bo Jackson getting a chance to even be in the same vicinity of him would just be electric.
Yes, it would. Yes, it would. And it'll be fun for Royals fans to see him back and get that number 16 in the Royals Ring of Honor where he deserves to be.
Man, it's amazing. My favorite number is 16. I wonder why. Oh, I don't know. Brett Hall, Bo Jackson. Those two are pretty darn good numbers.
Pretty good numbers.
Speaking of Brett Hall, let's jump over to hockey and let's talk a little bit about those St. Louis Blues. And yes, you see that right. Blues postseason run. They're only 3 points out of a playoff spot. They only have a handful of games left to go. They trail the Kings by 3 points. They are one game back as far as games played of the Kings. The Kings have a game in hand. They're actually playing tonight. And as I say that, I'm going to try and take a quick gander and see if the score is started. They're against Seattle tonight. Game just got underway, so 0-0 there. This is an interesting conundrum for the Blues. They haven't played all that well this year. They've had stretches. I mean, they were just 7-1-1 recently in a 9-game stretch. So we know that they can kind of put things together. They had a bad loss against San Jose last Saturday, but then came back on Monday and beat the Oilers in overtime. Really limited, McDavid and Draisaitl just the one goal. Yeah, it was the tying goal late in the third, but still to hold those guys to just the one goal and the 1 point each is incredibly great. Now they got a big game against Nashville coming up tomorrow with a chance, depending on how the game goes tonight, to possibly pull within 1 point of that playoff spot. Is this team a team that you want to see make the playoffs, or would you rather them miss out and just maybe reset their minds and reset the organization going into next year?
Man, that's a tough question.
It is.
I think for the team, it would probably be better for them to miss the playoffs because I don't think they can win a playoff series. I think you're going to get in and get drilled and be out. However, for the organization, it would be really good to get into the playoffs and get a couple of maybe a home game here or there in the playoffs and get some of that revenue money that can definitely help the organization. So it's a tough conundrum as to what you really want to happen because you always want to get to the postseason, but I don't want to see them get in the postseason and then get destroyed.
It's definitely a tough thing to think because any team can go in and win a playoff series at any given moment. I mean, we've seen that a low seed has gone on and won 8 seeds have won Stanley Cups. So it's not out of the realm of possibility they can go on a run. They at this point right now, if they were to to overtake LA, their first round matchup would be against Dallas, a team that actually we can beat. Although we haven't seen them in a while, we're going to see them near the end of the season. It's actually the last game of the season will be against Dallas, but still, it's one of those that maybe you score an upset in that first round, and all of a sudden boom, you go on a run. Who knows? But it would be good for those young players like a Jake Neighbors to get in and get that experience of the playoffs and see what happens. But on the flip side, again, this team, do they deserve to make it to the playoffs? Because a lot of these games that they've lost that would have really put them in a comfortable playoff spot right now are games that they should have won. Did they learn from them? And I would say no, because you had that debacle last Saturday against San Jose where you got beat 4-0 in a game where if you win that one, you creep even closer to LA. That win on Monday night could have put you to within 1 point with a game in hand, which is a lot more palatable than 3 points out with a game in hand. So do they deserve to be in the playoffs? I don't think they do. Would I like to see them in? Heck yes, because who knows what can happen? We saw in 2019. Who knows what can happen? And this is not a 2019 team. Don't get me wrong. This is not what we're going to have. But Jordan Binnington is playing out of his mind this year. He is really justifying the contract that he signed, the contract extension. A lot of fans were upset. I know one in particular, Blues fan reacts if you're watching. I know you were not so happy about the way that deal went out. And yes, his no trade clause is going to kick in here soon, but I think he was worth the signing. And you got a backup in Joel Hofer, who's not a starter right now, but is definitely a good push as a 1B goaltender that'll keep Binnington on his toes. I think you got a great tandem right there. I think you got some really good forwards. We interviewed Jake Neighbors back in 2020 as a teenager and blown away by his poise, his maturity, his game knowledge, all of that stuff. And that is shown this year. He is the Blues' leading goal scorer, and he is not looking like a rookie in any way, shape, or form. He is a guy that pairing him with a Robert Thomas and a Buchnevich, awesome. And Buchnevich, not having him traded at the deadline, I think that was the best move that Doug Armstrong could have made. I know people are going to be like, oh, you should have gotten something for him, blah, 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 blah. No, I think Buchnevich here and next year is a great move for the Blues. Yes, it does put them up against the cap, and yes, they're going to try and sign him to a long-term extension, but I think it's the right move. I really, really do. And I know people are going to be like, oh, 2 years, you're going to be wrong about that. Come back in 2 years. Let's see how many cups the Blues have won. Probably none. But, you know, if they're competing, that's all you need to do. And you've got the young kids coming up as well, which is great to see as well. And that's not even including the one guy that's not going to play with them next year. And we'll talk about him in a second. You're also getting contributions from the veterans as well. Brendan Saad has had a struggle of a year early on. He's picked it up, 5 goals in his last 6 games, a couple of overtime winners. Braden Shen picked up 2 goals in his 500th game as a Blue in that Edmonton game, and he's got 5 points in his last 5 games. So the guys that you need to start stepping up at this point in time have started to step up, and your young kids are playing. I haven't even talked about the guy that I've enjoyed watching and predicted was going to be a big-time player for this team in Toropchenko. I think he's played great as well, and you get the spark plug in Nathan Walker. This team has pieces. They just got to start putting it together, and I think if they don't make the playoffs, that may help, but I also think if they make the playoffs, it can help as well. So you and I are both kind of struggling on where we think this team should be when it comes to postseason.
Yeah, like everything you said is right. You know, I mean, you get in, anything could happen, and when you have the goalie play that the Blues have, you know, they get hot and they can shut a team down, and you could steal a series or two. I mean, it's not likely, but you could. I mean, that's how well Jordan Binnington and Joel Hofer have both played. And like you said, you've seen these kids start to step up, and it would be a good experience for them, you know. But I'm with you. I'm not sure they deserve to be there because it's been such an up and down season, and there have been so many times when it was a big game and you thought, oh man, they're going to come out and, you know, they can really make a statement, and they've just come out flat. Like they didn't even care if they were on the ice or not. Like Saturday night, basically, when they got booed off the ice at the end of the game. So, I mean, you know, it's hard to say. You'd love to see them get in the playoffs because we're St. Louis fans, we're Blues fans, we're hockey fans, and you want to see your team in the playoffs. But like you said, I'm just not sure that they deserve to be there, and I don't really think they could win a series. But you get in, anything is possible.
That it certainly is. That it certainly is. And let's talk about the man who people were hoping was going to come out of the college ranks this year after he was eliminated last week with Minnesota. Jimmy Snuggerud is going to take another year at Minnesota next year, which means he will not be a part of this team in training camp or at any point up until the end of the season next year. And I'm kind of okay with that. Everybody was talking about him after Minnesota gets eliminated, sign him, bring him in, get him into the lineup. But 7 games to burn 1 year of your entry-level contract, 7 games, 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 1 year of your ent I don't think is something that you need to worry about. I think you know what you're going to get with this with Snuggerud. I think you know what you're going to see. You don't need 7-game trial at the end of the season to see what he's going to bring for you. He's got 84 points in 79 games for the Golden Gophers, split right down the middle, 42 goals, 42 assists. Yes, it was a bit of a struggle this year without some of those bigger name guys around him. So he was the target and the guy that people were looking after. But he had other teammates that did step up this year that took that pressure off. And then he started to rebound again and start scoring goals. So you know exactly, I think, what you're going to get with him. And if I'm Doug Armstrong, if I see a kid that sits there and goes, look, I've got unfinished business here. I've got the ability to go out there and bring my team to a championship. Yes, that's delaying my entry into the NHL to a big-time contract, all of that kind of stuff. But it's because I have unfinished business and want to get my teammates a championship and myself a championship. I think that shows you some leadership and some pedigree right there, that if I'm Armstrong, I'm like, dude, that's awesome. Go to it. We're going to be fine next year. We've got talent. We're not waiting on you to be our guy. But when you're ready to go and you've either won your championship or got eliminated again, you got a spot right here. We're going to bring you in. We're going to slot you into a third-line spot. You're going to develop a little bit, and before you know it, you're going to be a top-line forward, and this team is just going to go places. So I'm okay with him sticking around at Minnesota for another year. I just hope that he goes out there and wins that championship and then takes that with him next year and goes, okay, I got this one. Now let's go win one here.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I'm fine with it too on a bunch of different levels, and I can understand both sides being okay with it. If you're the Blues, yeah, it would be neat to get the kid here, but like you said, 7 games, is it really worth 7 games of, you're not sure you're going to make the playoffs and you're not sure how much he's going to play to blow a whole year of control for one thing. That didn't make a whole lot of sense to me personally, honestly. If it was 20 games or 15 games or something, then I could see it. But for 7 games to lose that year of control, I'm okay with that not happening. And then, is this really the team that you want to bring a young kid like that into? When you're not really sure what you're going to get night in, night out from guys. You're not really sure the effort's there from everybody, that everybody's bought in. Give it another year, bring in some different guys next year, change the culture even more, have a more well-defined locker room, have a more well-defined roles on the team going into next year when you get into that end of the year and maybe you're closer to a playoff spot, and maybe you're really making a run at a playoff run. And then if he's ready after his college season's over, then bring him in and say, okay, yeah, we want you to come in and be maybe that final piece to really get us into the playoffs this year. Maybe you can come in and bring that little spark to get us over the top, And so, I think that makes a lot more sense. And from his point of view, I think you're right with all this stuff about, he wants to come in and help his team win. He wants another shot at the championship. He wants to be captain next year, and maybe, what is he, 19? Is he 19 or is he 20?
Something like that. Yeah. He's around that age.
Maybe he wants one more year just being a kid, man. You can come and be in the NHL and play for 7 games and you're the rookie that got on the ice a little bit. And yeah, you're going to get some money. But if you go back to school, you're the captain of the hockey team. Everybody knows who you are. You're the big fish in the little pond, and you get to be a kid for one more year because, once you sign that contract, you're a professional and you're an adult. You go back to school, you can be a 19 and 20-year-old and be dumb and, not do really stupid stuff, but you know what I mean? Still be a kid still enjoy it before you make that next big step. Because once you sign that contract, the goofing off and being a kid stuff needs to be over. Although some athletes don't get that, talking to you, Rishi Rice in Kansas City. But, so maybe it's a good thing for him to go out and just be able to be a kid for one more year and be the big fish in the small pond and be the captain and be the big man on campus. And then, he can also mature and have that leadership role. And then, he can step in and say, okay, now I'm ready to be a professional at the end of next year.
And then he also sees what happened to Connor Bedard this year, getting his jaw destroyed on a hit. Maybe it also allows him to change his regimen of getting bulked up, making sure he understands what type of body type he needs to bring into the NHL as well. And that's not to say anything against Bedard, because I think he acclimated himself very, very well in the NHL, and he pushed it to come back. And he's a dedicated player, and I think he's going to actually get better and bigger as well. And that's going to be something to watch over the next couple of years, is the renewing of that Blues Chicago rivalry. Both teams, knock on wood, should both be pretty good and have a lot of young players. And that Winter Classic next year, Oh my, we're not going to see Snuggerud there, obviously, but you're going to see Bedard. You're going to see him going up against a Kyrou and a Thomas and a Neighbors and a Toropchenko and guys like that. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And that's something that I look forward to as a fan. Yes, you're supposed to hate your opponents. You're supposed to hate Chicago, all of that stuff. But I'm excited to see how that rivalry continues to build and grow, because when it was Taves and Kane, there was a legitimate hatred there. I mean, you had the Seabrook and the Keith, you had the Backus incident, all that. There was legitimate hatred right there. And that makes a good rivalry. It really does. Now it's kind of like, okay, we don't like them, but we're kind of excited to play these young players. But then you have the stuff that went on behind the scenes that you're kind of like, that's kind of disgusting. I don't know why they were able to get these guys and all that kind of stuff, especially the fact that Chicago may get the first pick again this year. That just rubs you the wrong way. So the rivalry is going to be different over the next couple of years. But if you're looking at it purely in a hockey mindset, it's going to be exciting because you're going to have young players on both sides that are going to be electric and are going to make things really, really fun to watch.
Well, and that's just good for the sport. You want that rivalry. You want that old Blues Blackhawks rivalry, that hatred that there used to be when we were growing up. When the rivalry, the hatred there was for the Blackhawks and the Red Wings. You don't really have that right now. There's not really that team that you really hate, like you hated those guys. No, but it's not the same. It just doesn't feel the same. And so it would be good to have that rivalry and have that hatred, and have both teams be good and have young talent and make it a competitive, tough rivalry.
Yeah, it very much would so. So things to watch as far as things are going. Right now, the Kings have jumped out to a 1-0 lead over the Kraken. They got the goal from Kempe on the power play. So LA up 1-0 right now, early in the first period. So something to kind of watch as the night goes on for the Blues as they sit 3 points back of that last playoff spot. Kings have that game in hand, which is going on tonight. They're back in action tomorrow. The Blues are in action tomorrow night as well. LA is against San Jose tomorrow night. Blues are in Nashville on Thursday. Let's go ahead and jump real quick to talk a little bit about soccer. St. Louis City SC will be back in action on Saturday night as they will be hosting FC Dallas. They're coming off a bit of a struggle in a game against Real Salt Lake. They went down there, lost 3-1 in a game that was contentious, even with the regular referees back in play. A couple of incidents that happened in that game that maybe could have benefited St. Louis went the other way. And they haven't started off very well this year. Yes, they are 1-4. Yeah, 4 draws so far this year. It's sitting them down in 10th place right now. They've scored 11, conceded 11. So they're kind of just right there in the middle of the pack. And I know people are going to be like, well, yeah, they're second year in existence. They're going to be like this. Last year spoiled us immensely with how well they played. But we saw near the end of the season, I think, exactly what we're seeing right now. A team that is still trying to find their identity. They're without Edward Vluvin, who is out with an injury. Tim Parker's been dealing with a back injury as well. He's kind of been the heart and soul and spine of this team. That's something that they missed on Saturday against Real Salt Lake. Although not so much because they are second in the MLS with 100 fouls committed already in those 6 games. So they are a very aggressive team. But I just kind of want to get your thoughts on what you've seen of City this year, and do we see a turnaround here as the days get warmer in the area?
I don't know, man. I think this might just kind of be who this team is. I think they might just be a middle of the pack type of team. I think, like you said, last year spoiled us. They came out and far exceeded anybody's expectations. They played above and beyond for most of the year until the very end of the season. And then we saw them kind of come back to earth at the end of the year, kind of crash back to earth at the end of the year. And, I think they're just, they're a second-year franchise. I think they're having their growing pains. They've had a bunch of guys, like you said, hurt, and they're trying to find their identity and trying to figure things out. And I think they'll do a little bit better than this, but I don't think they're going to be the team that they were last year. I think this is just kind of who they are, and they're kind of in that growing pains kind of a stage that you see a lot of athletes in their second year trying to figure stuff out. I think this is a team in their second year trying to figure out exactly who they are and what they want to do and how they want to do things. And it just may be one of those years where you're just kind of I hate to say it, but kind of blah. And that's what trying to watch them has kind of been like. It's been kind of blah watching them this season. And it may just be a struggle this year as they try to get a foothold and figure out exactly where they go from here.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do in the summer transfer window as well. See if they maybe try and find some sort of designated player that can come in and create a spark as well. Well, I mean, Joao Klaus hasn't been the Joao Klaus that we saw last year. I think understandably so. Sam Adeniran has come in and been electric as at the start of the season. It's kind of been held back here the last couple of games as well. But we've also seen some bright spots as well. So this is a team that, again, with new players in, is starting to try and find their identity. I think when the weather warms up, things will change a little bit. I think the fans will definitely be even bigger supporters of them as the year goes on. Myself being in the supporter section for games, it's electric there already. And as it gets warmer, it's only going to get better. So I think they're going to be okay. You're right. I think they're going to be kind of that middle of the road kind of team. They may be one of those that sneaks into the playoffs. And maybe that's what's going to happen. Maybe they sneak into the playoffs and that's when they go on a little bit of a run, because then they're the underdog. No one's surprised by them, even though they're going to be surprised by them in a sense where, sitting up at the top of the table, everybody's gunning for it, regardless of if you're a year one team or not. If you're coming in middle of the pack, yeah, they may know how you play. They may know how to beat you, but you can still go out there and maybe shock a little bit a team that isn't expecting much from you. So definitely something to keep an eye on again as well. I mean, it's the beginning of the season. We'll see what happens from there. Quick shout out to our friend Tom Franklin, the soccer zombie. He's over in England right now. He's on an English trip. He is getting ready to start day 4 of 5, where he's touring a bunch of different soccer stadiums. He was over at the Etihad today, Manchester City, and he'll be over watching Liverpool tomorrow. Well, tomorrow our time. It's coming up on morning over there. But he is enjoying his trip immensely. I would urge you to go check out his Twitter profile, his social media. Take a look at the videos that he's doing. He's meeting up with some English fans that are St. Louis City fans, as well as some other fans that are across that great country over there where soccer is king. So definitely check that out and see his travels, and start planning your trip of your own over there to England as well. And if you don't have the money to go to England, start planning your trip if you live in the St. Charles area to come out and see St. Charles FC, USL League 2, USLW League squads that I'm a part of again this year. Going to get underway in the middle of May. So come out and see some really, really fun talent. We got some Notre Dame kids. You got a kid from Indiana. Got a couple of other D1 players that are local players here. So something really, really fun to kind of keep an eye out for as the summer progresses as well. So make sure you check that out. All right, let's jump into what is probably one of the most exciting it's always the most exciting time of the year, but I think it's doubly exciting this year because we've got a really, really good question as far as who are you pulling for, not as a team, but as a Final Four. All right, both the men's and women's Final Four getting ready to start this weekend. As you see on your screen right here, a couple of similarities as far as teams. 2 UConn teams, 2 NC State teams. Holy cow. 2 teams have made it into the Final Four. UConn, they're kind of the standard. They're the only team that has won men's and women's titles in the same year. They've done it twice. This is just the 14th time that one school has gotten both their men's and women's programs into the Final Four in the same year. First time for NC State, as far as getting both their teams in there. First time NC State's been in the Final Four since, 1983. I think we all remember how that one ended. As far as UConn goes, they're perennially there. Alabama in for the first time, and I bet you that sticks in the craw of Charles Barkley as much as anybody else. But the question that we posited on there is, which Final Four do you got? Because the men's side is definitely intriguing. You've got NC State as the 11th seed. You've got UConn, the defending champions. You got Purdue trying to erase the memory of the last couple of years. But on the flip side, the women's tournament has been incredibly epic. You just saw the Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese battle between LSU and Iowa. So Caitlin Clark advanced from there. So you got her name in there. You've got Paige Buckers with UConn, who seems to have been forgotten in all of this hoopla surrounding Caitlin Clark. You've got that. And then you've got NC State and South Carolina, who are 2 teams that no one is talking about. And both of those teams can win the championship as well. So it begs the question, which one of these Final Fours do you got? Which one are you going to be more interested to watch?
I think it's crazy to say. I mean, it's not crazy to say because it's great basketball, but I think this year the women's Final Four has kind of stolen the thunder of the men's Final Four because of Angel Reese, because of Caitlin Clark, because of all these really talented ladies this year. I think more eyes have been on the women's Final Four, and the men's Final Four just doesn't have the star power that it has had in the past, either on the floor or on the sidelines. You don't have the big names in the tournament in a lot of cases, and you don't have the big name coaches on the sidelines. And so I think the men's tournament has lost a little bit of its luster, and the women's tournament, because you've got these big stars, generational talent all over the place in the women's tournament right now, I think they've really stolen the spotlight.
Well, and the one thing we didn't mention, South Carolina's undefeated. They're trying to finish off a perfect season, and they,
Right.
they're like the third storyline in women's college basketball right now. A team trying to go undefeated and win a championship is the third story behind an individual player and a team that has won almost as many titles as anybody else in women's college basketball. So I think that is the most intriguing thing about it all. And the really cool thing is, they were talking earlier today on Michelle Smallman's show early on. I had to go in for my radio hours at 5 a.m, so I got a chance to listen to a little bit of it. And they were talking about the verses. You had the Magic Bird in college. That was the thing. It was Magic versus Bird. They took that to the NBA and helped the NBA kind of flourish again. After today's news that Reese is going to go into the WNBA, Clark's already going. Now you've got that versus from college making its way to the WNBA, and that could be something that really kind of pops that league back up into relevancy as well. And honestly, the last year or two, the WNBA has been growing. It may not be something that you can see visually, but it has been growing. And now you're adding in two top players that are probably going to go 1-2 in the WNBA draft. That just again makes this Final Four for the women's side that much more intriguing, because you look at the men's side, I couldn't tell you anybody on any of those teams, first off, and then B, any of those guys, are they going to make an impact at the NBA level? Who knows?
Very, very good question. Purdue's got a couple of guys that most people will recognize now because they've been there a couple of years. But yeah, there's just not that standout in the men's tournament. And here's a question for you. We're talking about the players. Who's the most recognizable name as a coach between the guys and girls? Is Gino Auriemma the most recognizable coach in college basketball at this point?
I don't think so. I think it's Dawn Staley. I think
it is.
So? I think
as many championships as Gino's won.
Yeah, I mean, now if you're going to sit there and say, okay, if you could name me one coach in the women's game, a lot of people would go to Gino because of the championships that he's won. But I feel like over the last handful of years, while UConn's been successful, I feel like he's taken himself a little bit out of the spotlight in a sense, where I don't hear as much about Gino as I hear about a Kim Mulkey or Dawn Staley. And, for good or bad, I mean, any publicity is good publicity. And I think both those coaches have gotten a little bit more negative publicity than positive. But I think with what Dawn has done at South Carolina over the last handful of years, and the fact that she's got her team undefeated going into this Final Four, I think if you were to ask this generation, she is probably one of, if not the top coach in women's, maybe even men's college basketball as well.
Yeah, I don't know. It would be tough because I think Gino is right there just because of the fact that a lot of people, name recognition. Because I'll be honest with you, I couldn't name probably 10 coaches on the men's side. I used to be able to name most of them. Yeah. I don't know half of them. I don't know probably 10 anymore.
I mean, look at it, okay? Who's NC State's coach? I don't know.
No idea.
UConn?
Danny Hurley. I do know that one.
But, I mean, Purdue? Is it still Matt Painter?
Yes.
So, I mean, he's there. And Alabama.
Tell you how old school you are. You said Purdue. I almost said Gene Cady.
It was good seeing him, though, getting some of the net from Eddie after they won the regional. It was really good to see him there because he'd never made it to the Final Four. And that's one of the reasons why it would be really cool to see Purdue win it, is the fact that Gene Cady would get credit for winning a championship there. But it's going to be tough. I think this comes down to, we can go ahead and make our predictions because my bracket went to hell a couple of weeks ago. Who do you see in the championship game on the men's side? Who do you see on the women's side, and who do you see winning on both of those avenues?
I've got Purdue winning. I have Purdue winning the men's side. That was my pick. So I'm going Purdue. I'm going to go Purdue and Iowa on the women's side. I think Caitlin Clark is just going to will them. She's almost unstoppable, man. I mean, she really is. so impressive. I think she may just will them to win, although, like you said, that women's side is so tough. But I think Iowa wins, and I think Purdue finally does it this year. I think they've just got the talent. And when you've got the big 7-footer in the middle, it just makes it tough. Although UConn has one too, just ask Illinois, because he totally destroyed Illinois. Did you see any of that game on Saturday?
I caught some of it. We had a men's volleyball game that we had to produce over at Lindenwood, so I didn't see it. And at one point, I looked down at my watch, and it told me the final. And then I got the message from ESPN that Connecticut went on a 30-0 run in that game. So, I'm glad I didn't watch it.
That game was tied 23-23 with 1 minute and 40 seconds left in the first half. Illinois didn't score a point until there was 11 minutes and 10 seconds left in the second half.
I mean,
30,
that's insane.
30-0. I'd never seen anything like it.
No. When I saw that, I thought it was a typo, because I'm like, there's no way a team goes on a 30-0 run and extends their lead out like that. And it just shows you how dangerous UConn can be. As the defending champions, they brought everybody back. But I do like your mindset with Purdue too. I mean, the last couple of years has not been kind to them. I'm back in 2021, obviously lost in the first round to number 13 North Texas. Last year, got bounced by number 15 St. Peter's in the third round. So they're on a mission as well. I know this is going to sound crazy. The fact that NC State's in the Final Four, the fact that this is, not necessarily one of those even anniversaries, but relatively close to an even anniversary, it would not shock me if for some reason NC State just goes buck wild and wins the entire thing as the 11th seed, although this is essentially the deepest any Final Four or any first four team has gone in the tournament. So if they make the national championship game, all bets are off at that point. But I think it does come down to UConn Purdue, and I think I'm leaning closer to your prediction of Purdue in that moment than anything else. Because I think, as you said, they just have that memory that they want to erase, and I think they can do it this year. On the women's side, man, I think Clark will do it, just because, I mean, I don't know if you saw that video of Van Lith just kind of going like this after Clark made another shot. She's like, how do you guard her? How do you guard? She's hitting shots from the logo. Yeah. But I look at it and I go, man, UConn has kind of gotten overlooked this year. I wouldn't be shocked, and I think it's very possible that it's a UConn South Carolina final, and I think South Carolina probably finishes up the perfect season. But like you said, women's side is stacked. So any one of those teams can win it, and it's just going to be exciting to watch for sure.
So if NC State does shock people and win, is there a ghost lead in that celebration when they win?
100%. 100%. Jimmy V is right there at the front.
I think the apparition would actually appear if that happened. I think you would see him standing there going crazy.
I don't even think you have to. You can picture it in your mind. You don't even have to see the actual ghost. It's going to be right there for them if they do win. Which, hey, it's going to be a fun weekend for sure. Both Final Fours are going on this weekend. Let's touch once a little bit on the NBA. I know we don't have a team here, but still a lot of stuff going down as they wrap up their final 11 days of the regular season. Lots still to play for in both the East and the West. Boston's the only team that has clinched a spot in the East as far as seeding is concerned. They're the top spot. Chicago has a play-in game berth already locked in, but everybody 2 through 8 in the East is within 6.5 games. Over in the West, everybody between 5th and out of the playoffs has a 7-game separation. So anybody can get in, anybody can get out in the next handful of games, and it's insanity what's going on right now. You look at the top of the West: Denver, Minnesota, OKC, all the way as the 1, 2, and 3 seeds, and the Golden State Warriors could be out before we know it.
They could be, although that's the team that, you get into crunch time, you have to watch them because they're very capable of still making a run and making an impact. So the West is still wide open in a lot of ways.
It really is. I mean, like I said, both conferences are wide open in there. Nets are a team that is essentially eliminated, but still has a chance to make a run. But for the most part, the East is kind of locked in. It's just a matter of seeding. But we've seen just how deep the West is, that any team coming out of the East definitely going to be at a disadvantage. I mean, even if you look at Milwaukee and what they got with Giannis, he's had career games this year and his team is lost. So it's not like the East is coming out with a strong contender against anybody, but Boston's sitting up at the top. I'd love to see Jason Tatum, get a ring and really kind of cap off a great season for him and maybe give St. Louis something positive championship-wise this year. But the West, man, I mean, when you've got Denver, Minnesota, and the Thunder up at the top, and the fact that you have LeBron and the Lakers still hovering around down there, I mean, it's scary top to bottom in the West for any team coming out of the East.
Well, I mean, it's been like that for years now. It feels like, it's like, oh, the West is dominant in the East. There's a couple teams that might make a run, but you just don't know. And it just kind of continues that way.
That it certainly does. That it certainly does. So that's another thing as we get to the the beginning of spring, start of baseball, as you start to see the playoffs for the NBA and the NHL start to ramp up. Definitely a lot to look for. Best time of the year in my mind. You've got tournament action. You've got playoff races heating up. You got opening day going. Now we've got soccer here locally. It is the absolute best time of year to be a sports fan, and the perfect time for us to return to the airwaves and bring you all the great sports news that is happening here in the Midwest.
Yeah, absolutely. And, not only all the action, you've also got the NFL draft in a couple of weeks, which could be crazy. And we saw a big trade real quickly today in the NFL. What are the Bills doing? Can you explain this to me?
I honestly do not know, because yes, I feel like they think that they can win without Stephon Diggs there, and maybe they got their eye on somebody in the draft. Maybe they're gearing up for a trade to put him up into the top portion of the draft, and maybe find a way to steal like a Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't know, but maybe they're going the route of Kansas City, where Tyreek was like, "Hey, win without me," and then they did. Maybe the Buffalo's sitting there thinking, "Okay, Diggs is saying, hey, win without me. We're going to do it, and we're going to go." I don't see that being the case. They just don't have the same weapons that the Chiefs have, and it's a different environment there as well. They got a second-round pick for Diggs. That's it. They got a second-round pick.
I mean, it's going to be a totally different team, because not only is Diggs gone, Gabe Davis is gone. So
Yep.
Josh Allen has to be looking around going, wait a minute, what are we doing here? Because they're both gone. Two of their offensive linemen are gone. Four of their starters on defense are gone. I mean, it's going to be a totally different Buffalo team next year.
It really is. And, with Miami kind of rising up to be kind of near the top of that division as well, with Tua playing incredibly well. They've got Tyreek. They've got some options, some weapons. Maybe it's the Bills' mindset of, look, hey, we had our shot. We didn't make it. Now we got to find a way to retool. And, yeah, we got a big contract with Josh Allen there that we gotta get cheaper and younger and hope maybe in the next 2 or 3 years we can rebound and get back up towards the top of this division.
Yeah, I don't know. It's crazy. And are the Houston Texans all of a sudden one of the favorites in the AFC going into next year? I mean, that team's done a lot in the offseason.
Actually, in my notes, I'm looking at it right now. I didn't say the AFC. I just said, are they the early favorite in the South? But you're not wrong in the fact that they could be an early favorite in the AFC, because you look at what their quarterback did this year. He was absolutely phenomenal. They added Joe Mixon. They've got Nico Collins, Tank Dell, and Dalton Schultz, and now you add the speed and Stephon Diggs. They are definitely a contender, not just in the South, but also in that AFC. I don't think they're going to sneak up on anybody this year, but
No.
you got to credit 100% what DeMeco Ryans has done there as the head coach, a guy that maybe got overlooked a couple of times for a head coaching position. He found the right spots. The Texans got their man, and after the Bill O'Brien debacle, they are back in prominence, and I think they're going to be around for a while.
Yeah, definitely. They've got you got a young stud quarterback, and you put those weapons around him on the offensive and defensive side, and their defense was already really good last year. They're going to be really dangerous, and that South is going to be, it was kind of the laughing stock of the AFC the last couple of years. That's going to be a really tough division, because Tennessee's gotten a whole lot better this offseason. Jacksonville's improved again. The Colts are better. That division could be really, really tough this year.
Yeah, you see that too. It's cyclical. Sometimes, the AFC South drops where, the winning team is under 500, and then fast forward a couple of years, and now every team's above 500 fighting for a playoff position. You may get 3 teams in from the South. Who knows? So it's nice to see that's exactly what happens in almost every single division over the course of a 5 or 6 year stretch. A couple of years you're going to be down, a couple of years you're going to be up, and then everything else kind of falls in between. And that looking at what Chicago is going to have to do here in the draft, after trading, Justin Fields, they're in a division that actually is somewhat winnable for them. I mean, I think you have to put Green Bay kind of at the top of that division right now. But outside
Detroit.
of that, it's true, Detroit. Yeah. I mean, do you think you get another good year out of Jared Goff, though?
I do, because he's had a couple. He's played pretty well. I mean, you look at his career, and other than a couple, he had a couple of bad years with the Rams. Then he got him to a Super Bowl. Then he had a bad year. But every year in Detroit has been pretty decent from Jared Goff. All 3 years that he's been there has been pretty solid. I think with the weapons that they have around him, I think they're going to be really, really tough, man, because that defense, they've improved that defense. They've improved the secondary. And he's got a ton of weapons on offense, ton of local kids on offense. And I think they're going to be really, really tough again this year. I think that's their division to win. But like you said, Green Bay is going to be right there with what Chicago has done, depending on where they go at quarterback. I mean, it looks like it's Caleb Williams, but you never know. But, they've added some definite depth at wide receiver and at running back. So the Bears could be tough. The Packers could be tough. Depending on what the Vikings do. I mean, the Vikings, there's a lot of rumors they're going to move up and take a quarterback. That whole division could be really, really tough in the North.
So this is one of the questions I've got down here is, after seeing what Justin Fields did in the second half of last season, when they kind of let him play instead of kind of handcuffing him into a role that they wanted him to play, did they make a mistake in trading him after acquiring a guy like Keenan Allen and really bolstering that offensive side of things? Because you've got a guy that knows the system, was successful near the end of the season, and now you're adding a weapon for him that will help him. Instead, you decide to trade him to draft a quarterback number one when you maybe could have kept Fields, dealt that first round pick, built some more draft capital, and maybe even added more weapons of protection for him as well. Or was it just, hey, we cannot repair this relationship, we're going to go with somebody else? Because now they're going to have to start over again with whoever it is, whether it's Caleb Williams or somebody else.
I think they had to move on. I just don't think Justin Fields is going to fit that system. I don't think he's ever going to be a great passing quarterback. I think you put him in a place like Pittsburgh, you let him sit for a year. I think he's going to be more of almost a Cordell Stewart type quarterback, the guy that runs more than anything else. He can throw a little bit, but he's more of the running quarterback and count on the running game. You let him throw maybe 15, 20 times a game, but you really run the ball 30, 35 times a game, which is, what the Steelers want to do. I mean, that's Pittsburgh Steeler football. And I think that system is going to work for him. And I think, honestly, letting him sit behind a guy like Russell Wilson, who, was kind of that way in Seattle. I mean, that's kind of what he learned how to do. That's how Seattle was successful, was Russ throws a little bit, but really it's mainly about the ground and letting Marshawn in those days be the workhorse. And I think that's what he's going to do in Pittsburgh. I think you're going to see Russell kind of teach him that. I think they're going to run that kind of a system in Pittsburgh. And I think he'll probably, in a year or two, be able to run that system and be an effective quarterback. But I don't think he's ever going to be a guy that is going to run and gun and throw for 4,000 yards. I think he's more of a 3,400 yard passer that runs for 700 or 800 yards a year.
A high upside Cordell Stewart, I think if you're a Steelers fan, you might be okay with that. As long as your offensive line can open holes for the running game, I think you're going to be okay with that. Now, let's turn our attention to those potential 5 quarterbacks that are going to be drafted in the first round. That's kind of the consensus right now, is you're going to have 5 QBs drafted in round 1. That's Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, J.J. McCarthy, and Bo Nix. Those are the 5 guys that are likely going in the first round, depending on how potential trades and things shake out. I want to know from you who you believe has the biggest upside and who is going to have the biggest downfall of those 5 guys.
I am not a Caleb Williams fan. I know he's got a lot of talent, but I don't know that he's mentally tough enough to be an NFL quarterback. I think he's got too many voices in his head, too many people whispering in his ear. I'm not confident that he's not going to come in and be a massive bust, because he never lived up to the hype at USC. He was supposed to be the guy that resurrected Trojan football, and it didn't happen. It kind of fell apart on him, and once things went bad, it just kind of snowballed. And so I haven't seen enough from him to think that he's the guy that I'm taking number 1. Daniels from LSU has all the physical ability in the world. He could be really good. JJ McCarthy, I don't know. There's a whole lot of hype going on there. Not sure about him. Honestly, he's another guy that I could see being a bust, man. He could be a good system quarterback, but I could also see him being a bust. Honestly, he's not going to go in the first round probably because of the injuries. But man, if I was an NFL head coach or an offensive coordinator, Michael Penix is the guy that I'd be looking at, man, just because he's got the legs and he's got the arm and he was good at Indiana. I mean, he kind of rebuilt that Indiana offense. And then we saw what he did at Washington last year. That's the guy that I really, really like. I know Bo Nix has been good, but he bounced around program to program too and never really lived. I mean, he was good, but he never really lived up to the hype going into college. So I guess Daniels and Penix would be my top two. But I think whoever gets Michael Penix either late in the first round or early in the second round is going to get the steal of the draft.
Yeah, I mean, the injury history definitely scaring some teams off as of right now. But you also see, I mean, you saw it in the games this past year for the New Year's Six Bowl or the New Year's Day games and all that kind of stuff. He battled through so many tough hits and really tried to continue to will that team to victory, even though they ended up losing. Yeah, he's a guy that has the heart. He has the physical skills. He has the mindset to be a top potential quarterback in this league if he can stay healthy. And I think you're right. I think if someone takes him early in the second round, they might get the steal of the draft in a sense. And yeah, it's hard to say that a second round pick is a steal, but for a guy that may likely be the sixth quarterback off the board, it's definitely a steal. So a team that maybe is at, the bottom of the first, or maybe the top second round team trades into that late first round and makes that pick. Totally understandable. And, if it's the Bears, if the Bears sit there and they draft Harrison Jr. number 1 overall and then trade back into the top and in the bottom half of that draft to pick up a Penix Jr., I think that one is a 100% win for the Bears, although that's definitely not the direction they're going.
No, they almost can't do that after you traded your quarterback because it's just too risky. But, I mean, I can see Michael Penix being, remember what was it now, 5 years ago, the end of the first round, the Baltimore Ravens traded back into the first round and took Lamar with the 32nd pick in the draft. And look how that worked out. I think that was the steal of that draft, and I can see Michael Penix being that same type of thing.
Well, let's take a look at I'm going to pull up this draft order real quick because it's the one thing I didn't prepare for. What's the draft order?
Sorry, I threw this at you.
No, it's okay. That's okay. Let's see if I can find this real quick. I don't know if there's anybody that has it readily available, which is entirely crazy. Here we go. NFL draft order for all 7 rounds. Obviously, we don't need all 7 rounds, but let's just look at the bottom of the first round, start of the second round. So let's start at 26 because the Packers at 25 already have a quarterback. You got the Bucs at 27, Bucs at 26, Arizona 27, Bills 28, Lions 29, Ravens, 49ers, and Chiefs to round out the first round. Top of the second round, Panthers, Patriots, Cardinals again, Commanders, Chargers, Titans, Panthers. I mean, I know this is going to sound crazy, but if he was still there, I would 100% lay money on the Patriots moving in to the first round and picking Penix. But the fact that Belichick isn't there anymore means it may not happen. So if you're looking at that round 2, setup, Panthers, Patriots, Cardinals, Commanders, Chargers, Titans, Panthers again, Commanders again, which one of those teams would you see potentially trading into that first round late to pick up a guy like Penix?
The Titans could be a team that does it. If you're not sure that Will Levis is your quarterback, that would be a team that could do it. You know who else you said at the end of that first round, which would be interesting, was I think they're 26. If you're Tampa and you have Baker for 2 years, would you take a shot at taking Michael Penix, bringing him in and saying, okay, we're just going to bring you in. We're going to ease you in slowly. Baker's our starter. You're going to sit for a year, maybe 2 years, and then you take over when that contract's over.
I mean, it worked for Jordan Love in Green Bay. And I know that's a different situation, a very unique situation, because not only are you following a legend in a Green Bay legend in Aaron Rodgers, he was following a legend in Brett Favre. So a little bit of a different story. It's not not like Baker's a legend per se, still a good quarterback, but a different situation there. But it's not a bad thing, to sit back, make a couple mil, learn underneath a relatively successful quarterback. Oh, and playing in Tampa for half the season, I mean, that's not a bad way to spend the first 2 years of your NFL career, especially if you got a chance to take over and lead them with some experience going into year 3. So that would be, yeah. I mean, looking at that, they're really the only team in the bottom half of that draft from 25 on down that really needs a quarterback in a sense. One team that I would throw out there that probably should but won't is a team sitting there at number 24, and that's Dallas Cowboys.
That team is so...
I knew I'd get you on it.
They're going to be so bad this year. I'm going to make this prediction now. I predict the Cowboys don't win more than 5 games, honestly.
Oof.
They have no running back. No running back at all. They have no running back. And Jerry's basically told Dak, hey, win this year, we're not bringing you back. You're playing for your life. You're playing for your coach's life. It's going to be brutal. They're going to be bad. They're going to be really, really, really bad. And that division's going to be tougher, too, because Philly's gotten better again. And the Giants have improved a little bit. And, depending on what Washington does with the quarterback, they've got some talent on that team with the Commanders. They get the right quarterback and a couple of good draft picks. They could be really tough. So, yeah, Dallas would be good. I think if I was going to pick the perfect spot for Penix, I think the team that could really use him, I'd watch out for the Raiders at their pick.
Yeah.
I can see them either grasping at straws and taking him. I think they draft like 16th, somewhere in there. I can see them doing that, or I can see them trading back and trying to get him.
Yeah, it's very possible. And again, they have a bunch of needs as well. So it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibilities for them. They're sitting at 13. So, that's a prime opportunity for one of those lower teams to jump up and potentially grab a quarterback if that's what they're looking for. And if the Raiders are able to fall back into that late first round, pick up an extra pick, and still draft a quarterback that fits their system, not a bad idea whatsoever, because you got Minnesota sitting there at 23. That's a team, 11 and 23. They could maybe pick a guy at 11 and then trade up and get somebody else. Who knows? I'm just looking at other teams that potentially might move up. It's hard to tell for a team wanting to move up to 13. It'll be interesting to see, but that will be one that, I could definitely see being the case, because they really don't have a quarterback that you go, yeah, that's who I want to see leading this team going forward. And honestly, I know that Derek Carr didn't have a great season in New Orleans last year. They're another team that could very well sit there and go, look, in 2 years, we got to have somebody different. So maybe they're a team that either picks a guy there at 14 or does what the Raiders could do as well and drop back down later in the draft, gain some capital, and then pick a quarterback late in that first round as well.
Yeah, very possible. It's going to be interesting to see who does what and who goes where, because there's some really talented players. It's going to be interesting to see how many teams get desperate for a quarterback and jump up and,
Overpay?
do something dumb. Yes, absolutely. Because it always happens, and it usually somebody's going to do. The guy somebody's going to do it for is going to be J.J. McCarthy, and he's going to end up being a massive bust. I mean, it just has that feel to it.
They all feel like he's the next Tom Brady coming out of Michigan, and he may not be. And that's the thing. I think that's where people are getting hung up on. That NFL draft coming up late April 25th, 26th, and 27th. So we'll definitely be letting you know what our predictions are as we get a little bit closer to that draft as well. And then, sometime in July, August, we'll have our NFL predictions where we can already bank on Scott saying that the Cowboys won't win more than 5 games. So you can mark that one down right now. The rest of the predictions will come later on for sure. Well, partner, we've gone 90 plus minutes in our first show back, talked about a lot of stuff, getting ourselves hyped up for opening day tomorrow. I know you're excited. I know, unfortunately, I'll be at work, so I won't be able to enjoy opening day quite as much as other people, but it's still going to be a great day in St. Louis as long as the weather holds up and gets a little bit warmer, at least by the time first pitch rolls around. Got a big Blues game tomorrow night as well, and City in action on Saturday. Great to be back. Any final thoughts before we head out for the night?
2 quick things. Anybody that's going to be at the ballpark tomorrow, if you see me, say hi. I'll be rolling around first base field box down around right behind home plate, basically. So be on the lookout for me if you're at the ballpark tomorrow. And one quick Cardinal note, I've had a lot of people ask me this question. I can't give you too many details, but Cardinal City Connect jerseys, because I've had a million people ask me about them when they're coming out. They're going to be revealed May 20th. They're going to go on sale May 21st, and the Cardinals will wear them for the first time on May 25th.
All right. Well, breaking news here on Toasted Tavern. So those of you that are watching right now got a little sneak peek behind the curtain. So, let people know when those Connect jerseys come out that you heard it here first.
Absolutely.
Well, my friend, it was great talking with you tonight. I know we just came back, but we are going to take another short hiatus because we've got some stuff going on next Wednesday with Lindenwood Lacrosse, as well as the Blues game, and then possibly on the 17th as well. But no fear, because on the 23rd, a Tuesday, is likely when our next show will be, because I'll be traveling on the 24th because I'll be heading down to Kentucky for the Ohio Valley Conference's Beach Volleyball Championships for year number 2, calling all of those games as well. So it's going to be a little bit funky these next couple of weeks of when we're going to be back in action. But come May 1st, we're very likely going to be back with you most Wednesday nights heading into the rest of the Cardinals season and into the NHL and NBA playoffs as well. So make sure you stick to our socials so you can find out when our next show is, and you can join us on the Toasted Tavern whenever we are on.
Absolutely. Stay tuned. Keep updated. We'll be posting stuff, and we'll be back shortly.
That we will. Well, for Scott Tobin, I am Michael Wags, Wag Connect, saying thank you for joining us so long, and we will see you in the near future.
Hey, it's U-Man here from Casey. For all your sports news, catch the Toasted Tavern with Scott Tobin and the man called Wags, weeknights at 9 p.m. You can follow Toasted Tavern on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Let's get toasted.